Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. Zen's inconspicuous appearance misled me, but there was something deeply disturbing about him. The first time I realized this was when humanoid detective Jade Sterling and I were investigating a brutal murder. The ash heron was torn apart, purple blood and entrails splattered everywhere. It was like a scene from a horror movie. I fought down nausea as I examined the bloody remains. However, Jade, this strange individual, just watched the scene with a blank expression, not showing the slightest disgust or shock on his flat face. As if he had seen it before. He casually commented, as if discussing the weather. I stared at him, my head tentacles perplexed. "How can you be so calm?" I exclaimed. Jade just shrugged his shoulders. "You get used to that in homicide," he said. We interviewed witnesses, a group of trembling Florians whose delicate, petal-like appendages were trembling. They described Drakkar, a formidable and menacing beast. Jade brandished a crackling phase blade, slicing the victim into pieces in a furious fit. While the victim fell in tears, Jade remained unperturbed, making notes on his tablet, without showing the slightest sympathy. I had to suppress the urge to hit him and scream, reacting to his insensitive behavior. Over the next few cycles, we followed the tracks with the single-mindedness of a Tauran hound. We finally cornered our suspect, the tall mercenary Borgin, in a bar at the starport. Borgin came out firing a plasma rifle, screaming, and ducking for cover. I hid behind an overturned table, looking for my stunner, but Jade, the crazy son. He rushed straight at Borgin, dodging between shots, and knocked the massive alien to the ground. As they fought and exchanged blows, I watched in amazement. Jade fought with brutal efficiency, seemingly enjoying the violence. He subdued Borgin. Borgin's face was a bloody mess. "You're under arrest, you bastard," growled Jade, snapping the handcuffs on him. He pulled Borgin to his feet, giving me a quick grin. There was a disturbing gleam of excitement in his eyes. He was enjoying it, that sick bastard. As we led Borgin away, I couldn't help but shudder. Humanoids are a species completely immune to violence and bloodshed. It's like they have a switch that turns off their emotions. I delved into the historical records, and what I found gave me chills. For thousands of years, humanoids have killed each other in countless wars, reveling in the bloodshed with psychotic pleasure. Even their entertainment is filled with graphic violence, with movies and video games featuring blood. The more terrible, the better. Violence is built into their primitive brains. I made a mental note to stay away from these deceptively cute little psychopaths. Let them stay on their own planet, the backward dawn. The defeated slaver grinned as his camera's force field crackled into life. "Do you think you've won, detective?" Sterling spat out a nasty stream of saliva that splashed across the shimmering barrier. "You're just a stupid monkey, wallowing in questions you can't handle." Jade just grinned unperturbed. "Keep talking, you overgrown cockroach. You'll have plenty of time for your monologue when you're rotting in the coalition prison." Borgin let out a harsh, jerky laugh. "You have no idea what's coming, you fool. The swarm is coming, and your precious coalition will be swept away like dust in front of it. Only the strong will survive the impending darkness." A flicker of alarm went through me at the mention of Roy. Recently, there have been whispers, disturbing rumors from distant worlds. But Jade just rolled his eyes, dismissing. "Your apocalyptic cult and stick it in your chest, insect. The coalition has stood for 1,000 years. It will take more than a collection of scary bedtime stories to defeat us." As we were leaving the cell block, I glanced nervously. My partner, Jade, maybe we should take his warning seriously. There's been a lot of talk about Roy lately. "God, not you too, Xailo," I groaned. I was expecting this apocalyptic nonsense from the media, but I thought you had more common sense. Swarms are just a myth, a scary story to scare gullible people. Now stop worrying, and let's go have a drink. I'm buying. I sighed and followed Jade out of the squad. Maybe he was right. The coalition has faced numerous threats before. Of course, these rumors about swarms are just the latest wave of hysteria that has gripped the gullible public. But I couldn't get rid of the anxiety that was tingling in the back of my mind. Call it a hunch or a detective's intuition. But something told me that Borgen's dire warnings shouldn't be dismissed so lightly. Dark times were approaching. I could feel it in my chest, and I had a feeling that the swarm would soon become all too real. A voracious horde blazing a path of destruction across the galaxy, devouring everything in its path. And when that day comes, when the sky darkens with the beating of a billion insect-like wings, will the coalition stand, or will we be swept away, as Borgen predicted? I prayed to the great mother of the hive that I was wrong, that Jade's arrogant humanoid confidence would be justified. But when I looked at the twinkling lights of Yaka City, I couldn't suppress a shudder of fear. The swarm was coming, and I was afraid that the galaxy would drown in blood and fire. Detective Jade Sterling, the last of the Star Marshals, stood alone against the oncoming tide of insects and fangs, a wall of writhing, scurrying bodies stretching from horizon to horizon. A surging sea of soulless hunger. But Jade wasn't afraid. He was a humanoid, damn it, and humanoids don't give up without a fight. Fight. He'll show those bastards from the swarm what it really means to be the protector of Zor. Come on, you dirty bastards! Jade roared, raising his ion blaster in defiance. I am full of rage and madness. Let's dance with Roy. The swarm replied with a chorus of screams, a psychic wave of anger crashing into Jade's mind. But he just laughed, his blaster firing a steady stream of searing energy into the swarming mass. The charred Zor was strewn with the smoking remains of swarm drones. But for every one who fell, a dozen others rushed forward, trampling their fallen kin and driven by their senseless hunger for destruction. Jade retreated, shooting and dodging, a whirlwind of desperate violence the likes of which he had never seen before. They were a force of nature, relentless and insatiable, a trillion mouths driven by a single imperative: consume, grow, spread, an extinction event. The swarm, the biomass intelligence, scoured the planets in search of scraps, leaving very little behind. The prevailing theory was that it began as a bioweapon created at a secret coalition facility. It was a superorganism created by genetically modifying ancient bacteria from a long-dead world. The swarm escaped from the facility and quickly spread to other planets. The coalition tried to contain the swarm, but it was too late. A dozen sectors were swallowed up, and entire systems disappeared into the maw of the swarm. The coalition then sent Star Marshals, an elite of elites handpicked from each species in the coalition. Jade was the only humanoid who was chosen. He proudly wore this insignia, but it didn't do him much good. The Star Marshals were killed one by one as they tried to stop the swarm's advance. Jade was the last survivor, the only defender between the swarm and the heart of the coalition. Now, it seemed like his luck had finally run out. His blaster clicked empty, his energy element depleted. The swarm surged forward, sensing his weakness. A billion scurrying feet turned Zor into a dirty mess. Jade dropped his blaster and drew his vibroblade, its monomolecular edge humming with deadly promise. "All right, you space bugs," he growled. "Would you like a piece from me? Then go and get it." He faced the swarm head-on, slashing and slashing with the ferocity of a cornered wolf. Blood gushed out, shattered exoskeleton shattered, but Jade continued to fight. Lost in the red pall of battle rage, he knew he would die there. But he would take as many of these creatures with him as he could. Then, just as Roy was about to overpower him, something unexpected happened. Jade heard a sound that made his heart skip a beat. It was the deep, loud roar of the engines of a humanoid warship. He looked up and saw a fleet of ships emerging from the warp. Sleek silver ships shone in the sunlight, and at the forefront, proudly displaying the stars and stripes, was MKK Independence, a towering fortress of cannons and armor. Jade exclaimed, raising his fist in the air. "Reinforcements have arrived. You swarms are going to find out what real hell is." Independence unleashed a barrage of fire, her railguns and laser batteries creating a path of destruction through the swarm. Fighters flew out of her launch bays, raining down a storm of missiles and plasma on the screaming horde. And in the vanguard of the assault, amphibious pods carrying an elite detachment of independent space marines descended from the skies. These genetically modified killing machines, clad in powerful armor, armed with weapons capable of leveling cities, fell to the ground like a torrent of steel. The assault troops descended into the heart of the swarm. Chain blades roared, bolters barked, and the swarm's advance faltered as the Marines engaged them with relentless precision. Jade fought his way to the nearest squad, dealing with swarm drones at every turn. When he reached them, the sergeant looked up and grinned, his teeth gleaming white against his sooty face. "Do you want to show these alien creatures what happens when they mess with humanoids?" drawled the Marine Sergeant Marshal. Jade grinned back, feeling the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I thought you'd never ask, Sergeant. Let's send these bastards back to their infernal abode." The Star Marshal and the Space Marine charged into battle, blades and weapons flashing, the swarm retreating before their onslaught, shrieking in agony and terror. Overhead, the Coalition fleet unleashed a torrent of fire, exploding smoking craters in the seething mass of the tin swarm. The collectors swooped down, but they were knocked down from the sky by precise volleys of railguns, exploding in fiery flashes. The battle raged for hours. The earth trembled from the thunder of humanoid weapons, but gradually, inexorably, the swarm's advance was stopped. The tin tide was crushed against the steel fortress of the humanoid resistance. Finally, as the sun began to set, the last of the swarm turned tail and ran, retreating in. Their ships were in disarray, and a battered row of humanoids stood tall. The paratroopers raised their weapons in triumph. Jade fell to his knees, exhausted but ecstatic. They did it despite all the odds. The humanoids held the line, and the Coalition was safe, at least for now. But even as he was enjoying the victory, Jade knew that this was just the beginning. Roy was still there, licking his wounds and bringing out new horrors. They'll be back, stronger and hungrier than ever. But this time the humanoids will be ready. The Coalition has learned its lesson. No more complacency, no more underestimating the threat. The humanoid race will stand on eternal watch, protecting the galaxy from the insatiable hunger of the swarm. They were the shield that protected the humanoid domain, a light in the dark. Sword and night, they were Space Marines, Star Marshals, the indomitable spirit of humanoids who took shape. As long as they existed, there was also the hope of humanoids. A lone individual, Jade, believed that Roy's victory would never be achieved because this was their galaxy. It was their birthright, and they would fight to the last drop of their blood to protect it. Humanoids, yes, Jade Sterling stood on the Independence Bridge, watching the stars fly by through the porthole. Roy had been quiet lately, retreating to the dark corners of the galaxy to lick his wounds, but Jade knew full well that he must not let his guard down. Roy is never silent for long. Even now, in some hive of the Federation, they are creating new horrors, evolving, adapting, plotting their revenge. "Marshal!" A voice called from behind. Jade turned around and saw Admiral John Ironside, his face lit up with a smile. Jade shrugged, his thoughts turning to Roy. "I can't help but wonder when they'll show their ugly faces again, sir." Ironside nodded, joining Jade at the porthole. "Our intelligence suggests that they retreated to their home system, probably to regroup." Ironside chuckled. "That's right, Marshal. We'll show these bastards what happens when you mess with a humanoid race." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Jade, when you find these swarms, give them hell. Jade saluted, a fierce light in his eyes. "You can count on it, Admiral. You can count on it." As Ironside walked off the bridge, Jade turned back to the stars, a predatory grin spreading across his face. Roy thought they knew darkness, thought they knew hunger, but they had never faced an enemy like humanoids before. A species that thrived on adversity, which turned every defeat into fuel for victory. A species that will never stop fighting no matter what. The swarm started this war, but the humanoids will end it. One way or another, the galaxy will be cleansed of their filth. Even if it takes 1,000 years, 1,000,000,000 lives, in the end there will only be one truth. Humanoids are eternal, invincible, like the stars themselves.